blizzard of '93, the world's biggest stress test, it's prime time with George Dorunda. Tonight, more at Showcase Cinemas with John Lowe, plus the Chet Dragon Band and the Jimmy STURR Band. So get ready for the most entertaining show on television. Hi, I'm George Dorunda, and welcome to Primetime. And let me say that I couldn't be happier to have you folks here with us this very night. We're saluting the big blizzard of '93. And you know, there is a sign, even with the blizzard, that the economy is getting better. Earlier today in Washington, D.C., the United States Congressman wrote a check, and it cleared. Hey, how about that? But let's just introduce our first guest. We're going to launch this thing right to the moon during this big blizzard. It's the Chet Dragon Band performing Baseball Hot Dogs. I don't think so, not yet. That's the Chet Dragon Band, but stick around. We'll be back with more of the big program right after this. And if you're shoveling, don't overdo it.
Yo, Alf here. Apparently some chowderheads out there aren't taking care of this planet. They're messing up public lands. They're littering the beaches and vandalizing the parks. Look, folks, public lands are not like pizzas. You just can't pick up the phone and order more. So let's take care of our land. Let's save the planet. Call me and promise you'll help. I'll send you a bunch of neat stuff. It's my way of saying thanks. It's an acknowledgement of your concern. It's a bribe.
The Army National Guard. It's men and women trained to be their best, trained to protect our country and communities. Americans committed to the ideal of the citizen soldier. You'll find them in your neighborhood, teaching children, running businesses, raising families. They're people like you and me, and they will always be here, serving, just as the Army National Guard has been for over 350 years. The Army National Guard, Americans at their best.
Welcome back to the big blizzard of 93. And what do you do in a snowstorm? Well, you can always go see a movie. So let's head over to Showcase Cinemas with our friend John Lowe and find out more about the movie theater business. Well, John, welcome back to the program.
We are again.
And in the early days where we left off last time in the downtown theaters, they didn't send around movie posters for the motion picture companies. You used to build your own displays.
Yes, each theater in the days of the 40s and 30s had their own art shop. Like, we had a group of first-run theaters in Springfield, the Warner Capitol, that played Warner Brothers pictures, Los Poli, that played Fox and MGM pictures. They alternated. The Paramount had Paramount pictures, and the Bijou had Columbia pictures.
So each theater specialized or had
Well, they were owned in those
contracts.
days. They were owned or had a partial owning interest in the various film companies. Paramount had an interest in the Paramount Theater, and Warner's had the Capitol Theater. So as a result, these theaters had their own stage people, where they would pull a curtain between shows. They would fix the seats, they would do screen lights, they would do stage lights and all the lights that were in the theater. And they would help build displays and signs. There was a sign shop in each of these theaters, and their job was to create advertising displays in-house. So that when you came into the theater, you saw this big lobby display of something that was coming next week. And in many cases, these displays were readapted and put out front as false fronts or put on the marquee as overhead cutouts. And each major city like Atlanta and Philadelphia across the country had their own sign shops. And every week, because they changed shows every week or every second week in those days, they had to create these lovely, fancy art displays that would knock your eye out as you were walking down Main Street by their theaters.
And unlike today, each one was unique. It was created by a different artist.
That's right. And they would send out pictures of the art, of the displays that they thought would be appropriate, or the type of display, or the style of display, or how big the star's name should be, or how big the director's name should be. And your sign shop adapted that. And then they would take those same pieces of cutout, Upson board or masonite, and they'd turn them around and use the back of them and cut them up again. They were very thrifty in those days. And for that, they would spend probably anywhere from $250 to $500 on one of these displays, these lobby displays, or these false fronts. They called them false fronts. And this was a great art that sort of got passed by as the television came into the picture and they cut their economy things. They just went into what they call theatrical posters, which were made up en masse and printed up and sent to the theaters and put in a special frame outside.
And even the cardboard displays today are all mass-produced.
That's right. The cardboard displays are made now primarily because they're used in video stores too. Ours are usually a little bigger, but they take the same thing and scale it down and make it for video stores too. And there's a couple thousand video stores as well as 25,000 theaters. So there's a lot of use on these.
Now, here at Showcase Cinemas, before the buildings were erected, there used to be a house here?
Well, this was a property owned by two nice ladies here in West Springfield. And I used to come up and down this road to Western Mass Theaters, which was up on State Street. And I was very familiar with this area because we had the theaters here, not Redstone theaters, but Goldstein. And I used to stop up at Shields' Donut Shop, here is Donut Dip Shop, all the time. And I can remember after I left Western Mass Theaters and went to work in Worcester for Showcase Cinemas, and we opened up the first theater in Worcester. It was so successful that they decided to build a theater in Springfield. And the location was in West Springfield. And I said, yes, I should know where that is on Riverdale Road. And I didn't. I knew where it should have been, because it was across the street from the drive-in, from the E.M. Lowe's, no relative, E.M. Lowe's drive-in.
It's not in the family.
Not in the family. I always say I'm the poor one. But anyway, there was some grapevines, very high vines along this road, and there was a little driveway. and you would go right by it and never know. And beyond the driveway was this old 250-year-old house and 250-year-old trees, and it was a lovely ex-farm estate, you might call it. And I never knew it was here. All I can remember was Seepsell's gas station on the corner, his Amoco gas station, who was there, was there for years. I used to stop there for gas. And all that time, I never knew it was here. But anyway, there was a story about why this location was picked. And Eddie Redstone, who was Sumner Redstone's brother, who both had founded the company or worked in the company, said the reason he picked this location was he was out looking with a real estate man in Springfield, in West Springfield, looking for locations of a theater, and he particularly wanted something on Riverdale Road, and he had just had a lunch and he had a headache because he had been seeing so many places, and he stopped for an aspirin at a drugstore, and it was up the street here at the drugstore, and he slowed down to make the turn, and he saw this piece of property. And he said to the real estate man, "What about that property?" And they drove in the, you might call the entranceway, and they saw this lovely piece of property, which is hidden from the road, was hidden from the road at the time. And that was how he started investigating, and that's how he picked the location. No scientific surveys or anything else.
Like they do today.
Like they do today, or demographics or anything else. And then that's how we wound up in West Springfield, which was one of our very successful theaters over the years. We've developed a nice relationship with the town and with the police department and with the city officials, and we hope we've been a good neighbor.
Now, originally, the cinemas were larger than we see today. Originally, it was 2 theaters.
Well, you see, in the days that after the war, the first group of new theaters that were built were shopping center theaters. In other words, General Cinema pioneered building a theater in a shopping center. There was an existing shopping center or a new shopping center, and they put a theater in it, figuring that the new people that had just built up new families coming back from the war and had children and so forth, would find it more convenient to go to a shopping center 2 or 3 times a week to do their shopping, not necessarily groceries, but just shopping, and find a theater there. And in theory, they were thinking of leaving the kids off and going doing shopping, picking the kids up afterwards. So they started these theaters in shopping centers, but very quickly they lose their identity in the shopping center. They become an anonymous piece of the shopping mall. But anyway, we pioneered building theaters, freestanding theaters, which is a theater that's in an acreage area. We have 25 acres here, as big as a shopping center, but nothing in it but the theater. We originally started a series of twin theaters in Toledo, Louisville, Lawrence, West Springfield.
The building design was essentially the same.
The building design was exactly the same in all of these locations, and within 2 years we had built 4 of them. Springfield and Toledo were built almost simultaneously, and Toledo opened a week after Springfield in November of 64. And it was a twin. One was 1,100 seats and the other was 700 seats, and it was a gigantic lobby, as we still have. They became very successful. They were luxury cinemas, that was what they were called. And they were a lot different than shopping center theaters, because we have special luxury reclining rocking chair lounge seats and things like that that made us different. We had to be different than the shopping center theater.
You had the large CinemaScope screens.
We had 70 millimeter 6-track stereo, and we had a Cinerama screen in each of these locations. Cinerama, as you know, was a ribbon screen made up of small, tiny vertical ribbons in a deep curve, which give you a tremendous depth and sense of realism, and you can sit down in the front rows and still find it enjoyable.
You needed special equipment for the Cinerama
Yes,
movies?
you needed special equipment, and of course you could show a film on the Cinerama screen, but you couldn't show it as big as it would be if you were showing a Cinerama picture. If you were showing a Cinerama picture, it was wall to wall, floor to ceiling. But you could, just like you could show a 16mm film on the wall here today, it would still show, but it would just fill up a small section of the screen. And the sound was tremendous. I can always remember in Lawrence of Arabia, one of the scenes where one of the British airplanes comes flying from behind the screen, supposedly, behind the booth, and goes right across over this, it sounds like it's right over your head and goes right behind the screen. Every time we show a true Cinerama picture with stereophonic sound, the audience would just eat it up. Space Odyssey, 2001, Space Odyssey. We had an awful lot of trouble with the teenagers they wanted to go down and sit in the front row, and they wanted to lay in the front by the screen. That was in the days when we were first getting Woodstock people and things like that. Just the tremendous technical perfection we had in those days made a big difference, and that took us out of the league of these shopping center theaters, so to speak.
So the performance had to be perfect.
The performance, when we played Lawrence of Arabia, we had engineers come from California, and they ran that picture twice that night after 12 o'clock till 5 in the morning, balancing the sound, checking the projection equipment, checking the temperature of the light on the screen, checking the speakers, and so forth. And they did that on a lot of pictures. Lucas did that with Star Wars, and we did it with My Fair Lady, where they would send engineers around from the coast to see that the stuff was technically perfect.
Now, which theater was the largest here?
The larger theater was the existing now 3 and 4, right behind us. That was 1,100 seats. Then when we built Cinema 3, a few years later, we put a D150 screen in there, and that was 1,000 seats also.
And what is D150?
Well, D150 was another, you might say, a technical name for 70mm. It was put out by Todd A.O. people, actually, and it was just a widescreen with, again, the 6-track stereophonic sound. It was a combination of the widescreen and the wraparound. We call it the wraparound screen, which would curve from one end of your eye, you'd be seeing the screen, the other end of your eye. And the sound was, of course, all over the place. We had sound, sidewall speakers, rear speakers. We had even ceiling speakers in some theaters. Then later on, we had a thing called Sense-Around. You may have heard of that, where
you fell in through the floor, where it shook the floor.
Yeah, that's right,
Where
Sense-Around.
movies like Earthquake.
Yes, Earthquake and
Roller Coaster.
Roller Coaster, Midway. That was, I think, wall to wall. That was the only 3. The Universal did that, and the sound was so vibrating, you might call it. That was sort of seemed to be as just a vibrating sound. But it was only good for spectacular things, whereas a stereophonic sound, a musical like My Fair Lady, an adventure picture like Lawrence of Arabia, Star Wars picture, stereophonic sound, now Dolby stereophonic sound is here to stay, and everybody, about 80% of our pictures are in stereophonic sound now.
And are all of the theaters in stereophonic sound?
No, 6 of the 10 are in stereo.
And one, I believe it's Cinema 6 today, has Matrix.
Yeah, Cinema 6 we still have 70mm there. We showed Ghostbusters in 70mm. We showed Hoffa in 70mm. We showed Alien and Alien 1 and Alien 2 and Alien 3 in 70mm.
Can you show 70mm in any of the other theaters?
No, but we can't show it unless you have a print, and the print has to be made by the film company for 70mm. But we are the only house between here and Hartford that has 70mm. We have our own house in Hartford has 70. We have a house in New Haven that has 70. Not all the new houses have 70.
Now, in the earlier days, you had live shows too. You used to run fashion shows and afternoon events.
We had a lot of interaction with women's clubs and PTAs and mothers clubs. They did a lot of fundraising. They would take one of the pictures like My Fair Lady, and they would buy out the entire house or buy a block of tickets, 150 tickets, and they would resell these tickets to their friends at a little higher rate. And we gave them a discount, of course, for buying a group of tickets. And so they would make an average of $3 to $5 or $7 or $10 on each ticket. And they'd have a reception up in the upper mezzanine here, and they would have wine and cheese or all sorts of Danish things like that, or buffets. We had Hawaiian dancers here. We had an opening night of Hawaii for American International College. We had parades down in here. We had Hal Stanton and his little group did a fundraiser for the Great Gatsby. We had old antique cars parading up and down the streets, and we had a movie being filmed down here, supposedly with Hal with his silent movie cameras and everything, and a little stage. These were always for the opening night premieres. I can remember on My Fair Lady in Worcester at Webster Square, which was a road show, I had the opening Wednesday night sold to a group, Thursday night sold to a group, Friday night sold to a group, Saturday afternoon was sold to a group, Saturday night sold to a group, Sunday afternoon and Sunday night was to the Heart Fund. So the first time you could actually have seen My Fair Lady was Monday, and the picture opened Wednesday. It was tremendous, the amount of group sales, theater parties we would have. On Sound of Music, which played a year here in Springfield, here in Worcester, as a road show. We had over 250 school groups to see that show, morning shows. It was the biggest morning show group we've ever had in the business. Star Wars played over a year here, and Star Wars was not a road show. Star Wars was what we call a grind presentation, which meant it had a lot more performances. See, a road show was limited to 14 shows a week at the most, whereas Star Wars was grinding out, and we played Star Wars a year.
Star Wars played a little over a year in 77.
There was probably only 100 and so theaters in the country that played Star Wars a year, and we were one of them here in Springfield. Tremendous, tremendous business. Jaws, Empire Strikes Back. These are some of our record-breaking pictures. Mary Poppins. Of course, they all do a certain amount of business in so many weeks, and then how long it stays after that is the test of how good a picture is.
Well, how long we can stay after this, we're out of time here again. Thanks for being here. We'll have you back again real soon. You stick around, stay close to the sets, because we'll be back with more Primetime right after this.
From Iron Maiden, drive home safe. Remember to strap yourselves in with your safety belts. You don't want to end up like Eddie. Eddie! Belt up. Don't be a dummy.
Welcome back to Primetime. And you know, after you've been out here for a while in the cold, it doesn't really feel that cold at all. It's almost like summer out here. And for all you kids watching television at home, and you're wondering how to be on television, what are the 3 most important rules? Well, first you have to relax. Second, you have to be yourself. But most importantly, always try to smile pleasantly. And something else that's pleasant, yes, it's the Jimmy STURR Band with the Polonaise Dancers here to perform Wally's Polka. Yes, Jimmy Sturr and the Jimmy Sturr Band, 6 Grammys to be exact. And hey, that just about wraps up another show here, but there's always something to remember. I made them laugh, I made them cry, but most importantly, I made them think. Hey, good night, everybody.
The Navy Adventure. It's the opportunity to be your best while helping your country. It's a chance to do things most people only dream about. It's pride in doing a job that really matters. That's the Navy Adventure. And if you're ready for the challenge of a lifetime, then you're ready for the U.S. Navy. Contact your local Navy recruiter. Remember, it's your Navy.
Every year, thousands of people are killed with a frying pan. Reduce your intake of high-fat fried foods and help reduce your risk of cancer and heart disease. For a free booklet on low-fat eating, call 1-800-EAT-LEAN.